Left of the box. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. So, many of you know I was supposed to have a live stream on Tuesday with the letter hack, and I was really looking forward to it because we were going to be talking more about relationship dynamics, with a lot of women wanting to go their own way, men wanting to go their own way, the rifts that are being caused, women not wanting to become pregnant and deal with these men, and then men wondering why they're single all the time and why they can't seem to get in a relationship. Like, there was all this relationship around stuff that I thought would be interesting to talk about because there's a lot of societal influences on what's happening with all that. And so we were going to have an entire show with that. And then you could ask me and the letter hack for like dating and relationship advice, which, he's a long-term married man. So yeah, sure, he knows all about dating. And I'm a perpetual single polyamorous person. So of course I know everything about relationships. So I figured that would be a lot of fun. And I was getting ready for it, had a fun little thumbnail for it. And I was in the shower and I started to feel really sick. Like a vertigo attack, sick. It's not the first time I've had one, but this got so severe, so fast, that in a short amount of time, I could barely stand up and I was throwing up. Like I tried to take Gravol, I instantly threw that up. And then I tried to throw up later on, but there was nothing in my stomach to heave out. And in under an hour, like normally, I'm a little reluctant when it comes to, calling an ambulance or even just calling a friend to go into the emergency room because I know it's going to be hours and hours for what? In under an hour, I called an ambulance because it was so severe that what I was going through felt so not okay, like what was happening to me. And so I called an ambulance. I called a friend to meet me at the hospital. And I managed to get myself down into the lobby of my building. And a very kind woman was coming in at the time when I was sitting down there waiting for the ambulance. And you sometimes wonder if there's any faith in humanity or if there's anything left in humanity. And she saw me and she asked me if I wanted her to stay with me. And I did because I was so scared at that moment because of how sick I was feeling and just the topsy-turviness and everything. And I don't really remember her name. I remember which floor she said she was on. I really would like to thank her for what she did. Uh, it didn't take long for the ambulance to get here though, so that was a good thing. But I just, there are still good, kind people in the world. And so the ambulance came and I got in and they checked my blood sugar. They did some other checks, blood pressure, all that sort of stuff. Um, they gave me something for the nausea that goes under the tongue and gets dissolved so I don't have to worry about swallowing it and then throwing it up. And that's when the question was, they didn't think I was experiencing something deadly per se. Uh, but it was up to me if I wanted to play it safe and go to the hospital and wait hours upon hours, or if I wanted to just go back up into my apartment and let it run its course. And you see, as much as I talk about how our healthcare system is in shambles and how horrible it is, and it's getting there, and a lot of Americans like to point at our system and say, look at the Canadians and the long wait times and all that sort of stuff. Here's where the biggest difference lies in this particular situation. In that moment, I knew I could go to the hospital, I could get further tests, I could get seen by a doctor, if for nothing else, just peace of mind, and to know I was okay. And it would cost me nothing. If going to the hospital were to cost me thousands of dollars, I wouldn't have gone. And who's to say that's the time I was having a stroke. Because the first time I suffered from this vertigo, about 4 years ago, also wound up in the hospital. It was my first time, had no idea what was going on. The emergency room doctor actually thought I had a stroke because that's how similar the symptoms are. And yeah, that was pat me on the head, send me out. I think you've had a stroke, but we'll have to do further testing. That was, I did not sleep well for a while after that. Turns out it wasn't. Still don't really know what's causing it. I'll get a little bit more into that. But at the hospital, I was able to get an EKG, more blood pressure work done. Got seen by the doctor, and based on my symptoms, he was able to rule out things like a stroke. And again, that's something that if I was in an American system, I wouldn't have done. And who's to say that that was the time that I needed to be there? And I was there for 6 hours just for them to basically give me more gravel at the end of the stay and send me home. But I also, when talking to the doctor, found out what are some of the key symptoms to look out for to know the difference between these vertigo attacks and what a stroke is. So the next time it happens, if there's a next time, I'll know. And unfortunately, there's not much I can do about it other than suffer through it. And it is hell. It like on the way to the hospital, I ended up trying to throw up again, but again, nothing in my stomach to throw up. My body was pretty insistent there was. And just collapsed at the hospital. Luckily, my friend did show up pretty quickly. And even though I was in no condition to talk to him or anything, just having him there, knowing that there was somebody else in case I became unresponsive and just needed somebody, it meant a lot. Like, who your friends are if they're willing to sit in an emergency room with you in the Canadian system. Because he knew he would be there for a while as well. And I really appreciate it, and I can't thank him enough for it. But there are theories as to what's going on, like a particle in the ear that broke loose. There's an ear virus that begins with an L, and it's a really long word that can cause that. Though I had a doctor's appointment the next day for unrelated. I had booked it like 3 weeks ago about the bleeding behind my eyeball that the eye doctor caught. I'm starting to think they're related, that there's something wrong. So my doctor was able to get me referred to things, get some blood work done up. And I'm hoping that if we figure out what's going on behind the eyeball, it would also help with the vertigo issues. Like clogged capillaries or something of that sort. Fingers crossed they're related. So treat one, you can get the other one done. And while I was in with my family doctor, super frustrating because we talked about what the eye doctor wanted me to see her about. Then I also had to talk to her again about my disability tax benefit forms that I filled out that apparently they've never received, even though I paid $80 for the doctor to fill it out because, again, not free system we're in. And then when I went to mention the emergency room stay from the previous night, she cut me off and said we only had time to cover those two things. Yeah, and that was after waiting an hour to see her. So frustrating. So frustrating. And the thing is that whatever it was that affected me, the next day I was feeling a little bit lightheaded, but Thursday I felt completely fine, like nothing happened. Today I feel completely fine, like nothing happened. So I don't know what it is. It doesn't have any lingering effects or anything. But it is scary knowing that there's something wrong with your body and you can't seem to get it figured out. But while I was in the hospital, just experiencing the emergency rooms in their current state, it's pretty bad. I was there for 6 hours. I was given a fit to sit paper. They handed me a paper in the ambulance saying I was fit to sit, which meant that I didn't require a stretcher, so that they would just wheel me into the waiting room, so that a stretcher could be freed up for somebody who maybe couldn't be in a wheelchair, even though I was not really capable of moving that wheelchair around by myself. And sitting up was a very kind way of saying how I was posed. Very, very lot of weight put on that fit to sit thing. Of course, I couldn't actually read the form in my current state. And so I was just sitting in a wheelchair in the waiting room, waiting to get seen. And there were a lot of other people there for a lot of different reasons. And some of the reasons that I could overhear were for non-emergency things. Things that people need to see doctors for, but they can't because they can't get a family doctor, which then just makes the waits in the ER even longer. When I was in the back area waiting to be seen, because first you wait in a waiting room, then you wait in a secondary waiting room, and then you finally get into a curtained off area and wait. And while I was in that curtained off area and waiting, a man had approached a nurse, and there was a bit of a incident. And I could understand the frustration on both sides. Like, I really could. He was a father with his child, and his child was sick or injured, and he had been there for only 2.5 hours. I had been there for, it was about 5 hours at that point. And he was really upset. And I can understand a parent being upset that their child is in pain somehow, and they want their child to be seen and know that they're okay and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, he was getting very aggressive with the nurse, and the nurse was having to tell him to back off, to go back to his room, all this sort of stuff. And eventually even had to call security to escort him back to his room because he was not letting up. And I understand her side of it too. And, you know, I looked around on the floor and things of that sort. It wasn't exactly clean in there. And that's what's happening. They're so overrun. They have so many people. Not everyone there is in an emergency state, you know. A lot of people just needed to see a doctor, and that was the only way they could see a doctor. And it's just so frustrating that this is becoming more common. But the other thing, again, that really separates us from the American system here is the only expense I have to worry about is the ambulance bill, which will be about $50. But since I'm on disability, that should get waived, and hopefully they'll do it properly this time. So there's no out-of-pocket expensive. Even the parking, when my friend was taking me home, the parking gate was up, so we didn't even have to pay for parking. And that was it. You know, I got the gravel while I was there, no cost. The EKG, no cost. The blood test for the blood sugar, the blood pressures, all that, no cost. Nothing. Nothing out of pocket for this. The thing is that our healthcare system is not free, and a lot of people don't realize how much it actually costs if you're covered under our Canadian system. And so I snapped a picture of this while I was waiting in the curtained off section. Emergency hospital fees. So patients using the emergency department are charged for care items and services if they are not covered by OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan. Fees for those who do not have OHIP coverage are uninsured Canadian residents of Ontario. So somehow if you're a Canadian resident and you don't have any sort of insurance, but emergency treatment is $359 per visit, ultrasound, radiology, $100, laboratory, $100, CT scans, $786, ambulance, $240. Like I said, the ambulance for me will be $50, which disability will cover. I've had, the first time I had this vertigo attack, I got a CT scan. Didn't cost me anything. There was another time I went in and had to get an ultrasound. Didn't cost me anything. If I went in uninsured, I'd be looking at $600 to $700 right now. Out-of-country visitors, emergency treatment, $825 per visit. Ultrasound, radiology, $150, laboratory, $150. So that's like blood tests. CT scan, $1,800. Ambulance, $240. Out-of-country visitors to Canada entering our emergency department are required to present payment at the time of treatment and complete and sign the following documents prior to treatment. So while you're in an emergency state, you have to somehow prove you can pay for this before you get seen. And that you have to sign paperwork saying that you are responsible for charges, authorization for disclosure of patient information, governing law and jurisdiction agreement. And then doctor's notes and fees. Off work and off school notes, $20. Insurance and disability and support forms, $40. Our health care isn't free. That's why we pay taxes, so that when we have to go to the hospital, we don't get billed this. We don't see this. I am trying my best with my channel to bring awareness to what is happening to our healthcare system. Because it is falling apart. It is getting worse. But it's not because of the socialism that the Americans will point to and saying that's why it's falling apart. It's because of the lack of it. It's because of the underfunding that's happening. And already thousands of people a year die because they can't get their healthcare needs taken care of. People get turned away from the ERs, or they're not treated on time in the ERs. They're waiting for sometimes days in the ER in order to get seen. I was probably seen faster because I was a fit to sit versus needing to wait around for a bed. And still, we are far, far better off here than we would be if we were in the United States. I don't want it to wait that long before Canadians finally wake up. I don't want to wait till it's tens of thousands of people every year who are dying because they can't get the help they need. And this is an intentional move by the conservative governments of our provinces, of our country, to defund our health care and move it to a privatized system that is far similar to what the United States is. We can't let this happen. And if people just keep on waiting until it finally affects them, then it's too late. Don't wait for it to be your problem, because by then it will be too late for you to do anything about it. I get so frustrated with this. We see the cuts. Most Canadian knows that trying to get a family doctor is impossible. Trying to get seen in timely manner is possible. Getting seen to specialists and test results. Everyone dreads going to the ER because they don't want to wait for hours or sometimes days to get seen. And even then, costs, there are actual costs if you end up in the hospital, if you want internet or cable or anything of those sorts. They will charge you so much money for this because they're trying to find ways to make money. And so for all the little extras, all the little gratuities and stuff like that, they charge so much. Tests that used to be free aren't free anymore. Equipment, like if you need a cast or a brace or something like that, you can't just get one. They charge you for them now. It is getting so bad, and so many Canadians are just completely blind to what are happening. They're not paying attention. And I just keep on saying over and over, if my channel achieves nothing else, what I want it to do is just wake Canadians up to what is happening to our healthcare system. It shouldn't be like this. It really shouldn't. And so far too many people are just complicit with it being defunded and privatized. We need more rallies. We need protests. We need people speaking up and speaking out. We need people to start actually naming what the problem is, and that is the conservative governments. They're defunding it on purpose. The Liberal government made it so that it was very easy to do that through their own methods of altruism and things and neoliberal policies and stuff. So it's not like they were making it better. They would keep some areas okay, but they would also do cuts here and there. We need a complete overhaul. We need to have the healthcare systems that Americans seem to think we have. Well, before recently when they started hearing about our long wait lists and things of that sort. I wish I had a bigger voice just for this, just for the healthcare element. It is so frustrating. And when I see family members and friends that are suffering because they can't get the healthcare they need, Because even something as simple as like, okay, a hip replacement, it isn't life saving, so it can take years to get it. What about the quality of life for that person during that time? Why are we okay with that person not being able to work or go on a walk or hang out with friends the way that they normally could? Because it's not life threatening. We have to do better in this country. So I just want to let everyone know I am okay. Sure, we don't know what's causing it, but I feel fine today. Jeannie Bottle, same here in UK. NHS underfunded, then pushed into accepting private finance loans. Cons trying to bring in US insurance system too. Yeah. And it's just because they talked about this on the Majority Report not too long ago, and I was trying to call in so that I could talk about that caller and what he was wondering about, countering what Americans say about Canadians and stuff. And one thing that they were mentioning is like ask a Canadian and if they prefer. And it's like, okay, I'm right here, area code. And the thing is that any average Canadian would say that they like our healthcare system, our universal healthcare, that they think it is, and that they would never want the American healthcare. But they're doing nothing to stop it from going that way. Like they're really asleep on this, that they're not aware that this is happening. Because for the vast majority of people, if you're generally speaking healthy, you only have to go to the doctor once in a while because of an issue. You don't know how bad it's getting. But if you have a chronic issue, if you're trying to get diagnosed with something, if you're in an emergency, if you're living with disabilities and all that sort of stuff, you really see how bad it's gotten. If you can't get a family doctor, then you know how bad it's getting. But the vast majority of Canadians don't see it yet. And by the time they do, it will be too late for so many people. Just having access to an emergency room is life-saving in so many ways. And that's why I say this healthcare system has saved my life 5 times over. And it's part of the reason why I'm fighting so hard for it. Because living a healthy life, just having that even footing with everyone else, that you have a chance to live a healthy life and what that does for you when it comes to participating in society and getting a job and having relationships and all that sort of stuff. It is so fundamental to society. And that's why I keep on fighting for it, because we all deserve to be happy and healthy at a bare minimum.